gosh. Oh my gosh. So this is the other tip. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. So I posted a fun video on Tuesday, just sort of making fun and just having a light heart about my new Monstera, which is on my right side, and I will show a proper view of it throughout the video. But today I just wanted to talk about how I actually went about acquiring this amazing plant. It was a bit of an adventure and I still can't believe that I went ahead and did it. So if you're a bit plant crazy like I am and you want to know how I went to the Netherlands and brought back this huge beast of a Monstera, stay tuned. Just as a backstory, I was on Instagram and one of the feeds came back and showed this huge Giant Monstera, and so I've followed it through and saw that it was from this person, Blooming Kim, on Instagram. And so I was like ogling her plant, and she'd done like an image of it and then a follow-up video of actually going to find the plant and just showing us like what it looked like, and I was so taken aback because that's exactly what I was looking for. Now I think it was 3 or 4 weeks now back I'd done a video of clearing space and just getting rid of some plants, and one of those plants was a cutting of a Monstera, and I'll insert here the reason why I got rid of it. The Monstera Deliciosa, the one I had, went the cuttings because I know what I do want is a big leafed Monstera Deliciosa, and I think I just jumped the gun in trying to buy one that wasn't exactly the right size, wasn't exactly what I wanted. And when I saw Blooming Kim's Monstera, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly it. So like I watched her video on YouTube, she's the same, and I just fell in love. So I like messaged her and said, can you tell me where you got it from please? And she was so kind and told me she'd got it from the Global Garden. So what I did, of course, went on the internet and like had a look at Global Garden, because I figured during the pandemic other garden centres had been going online, so I thought maybe they'd be doing any deliveries. So I went in there, I saw that they didn't have a web shop, so I sent them an email just saying, I've seen this Monstera from this other Instagram person, and I said, she mentioned that there's another one there but just a bit smaller. And so Global Garden messaged me back saying, yes, I think this is what you're talking about, and they showed me these pictures. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I want. That's exactly what I'm looking at, and I keep looking at it, sorry, because it's just so amazing. So I saw those pictures and I was like, oh my gosh, yes. So I think I said something like, I must have asked if they delivered, and they were like, no, we do not deliver, and as far as I'm aware they didn't plan to deliver. So I was like, oh, that's such a shame because it's such a beautiful plant. I'll just have to say thanks but no thanks, and I look forward to visiting another time maybe. So I think I let maybe a couple of days go by, and I was like going back on Blooming Kim's Instagram post, and I was like looking at all these other Monsteras, and I just thought to myself, you know what, why not give it a try? I went around London to my usual shops just to check. So I think there are a few shops that I like frequenting in London, and I went around in a few areas and I did see a Monstera. I don't think the leaves were as huge as the latest one, but it was pretty big size, and that was going for £450, and I was like, okay, that's a lot of money. So I thought to myself, all right, let's see if we could make this work, because this Monstera was a whole lot cheaper, and it was €159. So, but of course you got to factor in the travel. So I had a look around just to see, comparing the prices and availability, and I just randomly said to my partner one day, what do you think about taking a trip to the Netherlands to pick up a plant? And he's like looked at me like I'm crazy, but he always supports me, and I think we support each other in what we do. So he was like, fine. So I had a look at all the arrangements to make sure I could actually go to the Netherlands. So here are my tips for that. The first thing, this is October. In this environment, there is a pandemic, as we all know now. So make sure when you plan out your route and you plan the countries that you will be crossing. We happen to be crossing, well, France obviously, we're taking the Eurotunnel, Belgium, and then into Netherlands. And each of those may or may not now have their own rules about, around the pandemic and how you access those areas. So please go onto your government websites, which is what I did. So I went onto the UK government website to have a look at what the different requirements would be crossing from the UK through France into Belgium, into Netherlands while driving. So that will dictate a lot of the things like quarantining when you get back and isolating and what you can and can't do. So I recommend highly before you take any trip like this, especially if you're driving. I found it a lot easier in terms of managing the requirements of quarantine. So I do suggest making sure you check the rules. There are things like travel corridors, for example, where if you're in the UK, there are certain countries that are on a travel corridor list where you can pass through them but may not be required to self-isolate for the 14 days or so when you get back. But again, check the government website because this information is changing all the time. So that's one tip. The other tip is have a look at Eurotunnel, and if you can, book way in advance. We booked, I think, about a week in advance, and on the day of travel the tickets had more than doubled because of course it's last minute and everything's allocated. So I would highly suggest booking in advance. You get really good rates. So anyway, so having looked at all the information and feeling comfortable about how we would travel and what that would mean in terms of our own safety, the safety of others and our health, I then messaged Global Garden back and said, actually, is that plant still available? And they were like, yeah, it's available. I was like, okay, I'm coming. So I let them know in advance that I was coming, just as a heads up, of course. But what you get when you get there is what you get when you get there. But they were so understanding and so accommodating, and just really lovely to communicate with. It never took longer than a day to get back to my emails and my questions. So anyway, so then the day comes and we set off at 6:30 in the morning. I think we started at 6:30 and our Eurotunnel booking was at 8:20 a.m. Now, again, this depends on how long you plan on going, how long you plan on staying. I knew that we were only going to do a day's trip for our circumstances and what worked for us. Bear in mind, we'd never done this journey before. And I should say the other thing is, aside from checking the health and safety requirements of these countries that you'll be going into, also of course check there on the UK government website. There is a place where you can find out what plants you can and cannot bring back to this country. So that's another document that I checked and had a look what the Monstera might be classified as and the likelihood of being able to actually bring it back into the country, because some plants are prohibited, some plants are regulated, and just for your information, but please also check this at the time of your own travel because things might change. The rule that I found was that if the plant originated in Europe, then it would likely be okay to come back into the UK with. But one thing I also wanted to check is that the Monstera had a plant passport. Now I didn't ask Global Garden in advance because I was fairly sure, having purchased a lot of European plants from Europe via online, that they would have some sort of passport stamp on the pot. I highly recommend you check because I don't want you to go to the Netherlands, buy lots of plants and then you're stopped at customs. No. So just make sure you check that. Alright, so we made it through the passport check on the UK side. So now, yeah, we're heading out. Fingers crossed.
Ladies and gentlemen, we shall be arriving shortly. Remember to take your vehicle out of first gear once the shuttle has stopped, and do not start your engine until unloading begins.
And as we're coming out of the Eurotunnel, of course my partner reminds me that they drive on the right, and even the tannoy says don't forget you drive on the right in France. But that wasn't too much of a problem. The thing is, there had been some strict rules in France about breaking speed limits. Of course, there's always rules about that, but you had to be really careful about making sure that you're driving correctly, driving within the limits. So we were a bit nervous because we'd never driven in France before. But I'd say at the time that we went, the road markings were excellent. Very frequent intervals you would see the speed limits. Now I should say that we found how quickly the speed limits change, a bit like unusual, but they were always visible. So I think for someone who's newly driving through France, if you're someone who's planning this journey, at least there's that reassurance that you know what you're looking at. And the other thing is, make sure, if you've never driven to France before, that you have in your car or whatever it is, the ability to see kilometers per hour and miles per hour, because in the UK, of course, our dials and our speed limits are miles per hour, whereas as soon as you got into France, it was kilometers per hour. So it took us like 2 seconds to think, oh, actually, we might be speeding here. So you've got to adjust that as soon as you get in there. I want to mention something that's another tip that's helpful and totally, no, of course, not even sponsored, but we used Google Maps from the beginning to plan our journey. There are some areas where you may not know the speed limit, and on the Google Maps it would show you what the speed limit was, and you would then see the sign on the road, and it was corresponding, and it would change as quickly as the sign changed. So I would highly recommend that if you don't have any other system, or if you want something just to reassure you. I mean, at the time that we took the journey, it was all current, so always be mindful of that. Of course, you can do your research beforehand and make sure you know what the roads are, but Google Maps was able to show us, okay, this is the speed limit for this area, and then the sign would come to reassure that that's actually correct. So I highly recommend that. There was a toll road between Belgium and Netherlands, and that's where we encountered our first hint of what would be a problem later on. So as soon as we crossed into Netherlands, I gave the Global Garden a call and let them know, I'm about an hour and a half away now, just to confirm that I'm still coming, is everything okay? And they were like, yeah, the colleagues are here and everything's fine. So I was like, yes. So we got to Global Garden and I was super excited. Like, we got there, I think around 2 p.m. local time. Is that it? Over there?
Yeah. I just remember seeing that images of like it's too big to miss.
Okay, so where that car just turned,
That's the
right?
sign anyway.
Just here. This was our first time there. I didn't know how they would feel about, recording. They don't really know who I am. I'm just some random customer coming in recording. You don't know what I'm recording for. So I only took a few clips and I'll insert them for you without my voiceover. I went to the kiosk and I tried my best to say a few things in Dutch, just asking for help, but thankfully, yeah, the staff there are of course professional, and I've been corresponding with a lovely lady called Yolanda. So I went looking for assistance and I came across this lovely gentleman called Ron. Anyway, so he wraps it up and we take up her light, we take the plant, we go to the till. I'm so ready, like the money's ready, the plant is here, we've said our farewells, and now we're ready to go, right? We get to the till and the cards declined. Like, the cards declined and we're like, what do you mean? Because we specifically moved money over so that it's in euros to reduce any fees that we might have to pay. So we were ready, like I knew I knew that there was no reason for anything to decline. So we give him another card. Sorry, it's declined. We were like, I just felt like, did we just come all this way and we can't get our cards to work? One of the other clerks comes to us and says, oh, the machine won't accept any card that has embossed text, so it has to be completely smooth. So okay, whip out another card that is completely smooth and put that in, declined. I was like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness, what is going on? So it turns out that basically they only accept Maestro or cash, and we have no cash. We have no cash. We have all the cards in the world but no cash. So I say to him, is there a bank somewhere nearby? And bear in mind, when we were driving, we did not see any kind of like residential, like city center, anything. So when I asked him that, I was actually desperately hoping that he had an answer, and thankfully he did. He directed us to a supermarket which is like 5 minutes away, which did accept our cards, and so we were able to get the cash out, come back and get the plant. So I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So this is the other tip. When you go into the Netherlands, especially if you're going to Global Garden, key point, either make sure you have some euros to hand to the value that you're planning on spending, or in this case of Global Garden in Netherlands, have a Maestro card. So we've got our plant now and we're heading back to the Eurotunnel. We get to the Eurotunnel, we get through passport check-in, and our vehicle is like checked. As soon as he saw the plant in the back, then he's like, okay, can you take this other route and go to the secondary check? I was like, oh Lord. Thankfully, obviously I made it through, but we had to come out of the vehicle. The whole vehicle had to be scanned, and I don't really know exactly what they do, but I remember the siren went off on our vehicle, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna get rid of this plant. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking of anything else because there's nothing else to worry about except for this is the only new thing that we'd brought back. But thankfully it all went through just in time, and then of course we got back onto the Eurotunnel. When I came home and unveiled her, she was absolutely amazing, and you could see that unveiling or the reveal in my Monstera the musical. So I'll insert that if you just want to have a look at what it was like when we actually revealed her here in the home. I will take the camera and just show you this lovely plant and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.